Okay, my dear friends, so now it's time for my talk. I'll make every attempt to keep it brief. I want to start really by honoring our very beloved and cherished congregant and friend, David Heitmiller, who passed away recently, who left us so suddenly. You know, he was with us since 2001. So in a way, many of us who have been here a long time, we have grown up with him. And he, as treasurer, as associate minister, was really, and not only an integral part of the community, he was really a pillar of our community. You know, in Islam, they say that the legacy of someone who is departed can be continued in three ways. One is by that person establishing a charity which benefits people. The other one is through imparting some knowledge that is of deep value. And the third one is children or relatives who continuously or throughout days, weeks, months, decades continue to pray for the soul of the loved departed one. Now, those of you who knew David, they know how much David dedicated a large part of his 20 years with us at ICS in really growing and benefiting our community. His contribution to charity, to ICS that we pray will continue for decades, is very clear, it's very apparent, it's very real. About knowledge, imparting some knowledge, some of you know, many of you don't know, he and his beloved wife Jackie, they wrote a beautiful book called Getting a Life? It's about simplicity, published by Penguin. Beautiful, powerful insights in that book. Getting a Life. And thirdly, of course, his children, his grandchildren, and members of our community will really continue to pray for him. So if I may, I'll just once again quote the Islamic mystics about someone who has passes away, particularly a beloved friend, such a cherished member of our community, David Heitmiller. Brother David, how marvelous was the way you quit the world, the way you ruffled your feathers and breaking free of your cage, you took off for your soul's world. A love-sick nightingale among owls, a lovesick nightingale among owls, you caught the scent of roses and you flew to the rose garden. Just a few seconds of silence honoring Brother David Heitmiller. Okay, my friends, so just now a few words about circular leadership. I have chosen the way of counsel, wise counsel, and my beloved friend Karen Lindquist, she gave me this paper which was downstairs, which outlines the intentions and the main points about the way of counsel in our community. So the first one, which is not here but which we practice, is we really attempt to make our counsel, our guiding counsel, non-hierarchical. And what does that really mean? It has many, many meanings. For me, one meaning is that we really do as much as we humanly can to honor the divine spark in the other. Regardless of all our biases of gender, race, culture, education, religion. And the other one is, this is the insight of mystics, please honor all kinds of knowledge. And there are two categories of knowledge. One is book learning, very important, you know, what the experts say, what the pundits say, what the authorities say. But there is another kind of knowledge, which sometimes is called a primary intelligence. It's a knowledge that does not flow from outside to inside, it's from inside to outside. Rumi calls it a spring overflowing its spring box. It neither turns yellow, it's fluid, it never becomes stagnant. This is the knowledge, for example, that birds have when they make nests, or that bees have when they collect nectar. They haven't attended universities or had any specialized training. They just have that knowledge. So we want to really honor that kind of knowledge, which exists, by the way, if you read the Quran deeply and other holy books, within every single human being. And how do you achieve that? Through piety, through silence, through opening up the heart, different ways. So that was my first point. The second point in the guiding counsel, way of counsel, is listening from the heart. Can I really listen? I love those wonderful insights. What is listening? The Islamic mystic saying listening is metaphorically, putting your head on the person's chest and just sinking into the answer. We are told to really pay attention to this about who is an enemy, somebody adversarial. Somebody adversarial is someone whose story I have not listened to. May I truly listen to all voices. That wonderful professor, Noam Chomsky from MIT, he says, if you don't want to listen to those whom you despise, if you don't listen to those whom you despise, you don't really believe in the freedom of speech. For me personally, I love the practice of self-talk. So, I tend to interrupt. So I have this inner conversation, compassionately. Brother Jamal, please, just listen. Brother Jamal, please, just listen. Just listen. So the question now is, how do you develop this practice of listening? One way, as I said, is self-talk. Another one, a very important one, is can I begin to listen to all the voices inside myself? The voice of my wounded child, the voice of the angry one. There's so many voices of the ego, and then there's also the voice of the higher self. Can I listen? Can I act on them? I'll make mistakes, but then I shall learn from my mistakes, and eventually, through my experiences, through the lessons I learn, through the mistakes I make, I shall slowly begin to connect with the real voice, the voice of the higher self within me. One last simple practice is, this is done in spiritual circles. Can you put your hand over your heart as a meditative practice and just connect with and listen to the beat of the heart? Can I listen to my heartbeat? And if I do this regularly, not only does it ground me, open up my heart, but it really deepens my ability, my capacity to really listen. Okay, the second one I'm looking at the paper here is speaking from the heart. Can I speak from the heart? Can I be authentic? Can I be in alignment? My thoughts, my feelings, and my speech being in alignment. Can I speak gently, compassionately. The great sages say, it is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. Well, of course, passion is important. I sometimes find myself speaking very passionately, but there are limits to that. If it rains or pours all day, that metaphor for passion, it can cause flooding, problems. So before you speak, this is some insight all traditions have. They have some gateways. Jamal, before you speak, ask yourself, whatever you're saying, is it true? Is it the truth? Is it compassionate? Is it necessary? Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Just be with that. In fact, in some traditions, they say, speak only if it improves upon the silence. That's a hard one for me. But let me give you an example. This is in several traditions. Let's say I have a friend who's married, who's having an adulterous affair. And so maybe I blurt out this truth in the presence of my friend and his wife. Well, what I spoke about his affair in the presence of both, was it true? It is the truth, what I'm saying. Is it compassionate? Well, only you know. Is it necessary to do it this way? Or could it have been better if I had spoken to my friend separately and helped in more life-giving ways? It's a personal decision. But again, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Okay, moving on. The third one I see in the paper here is to be succinct, to be brief. I like that wonderful saying, when you prune, this is from Rumi, if you prune weak branches, the fruits taste tastier. When you prune weak branches, the fruits, they taste more delicious. And of course, if you study Taoism, this is a very critical point in Taoism, that the biggest problem a human being has is they just don't know when to stop. There's a metaphor of, you can pour water into a glass, it creates abundance, greater amounts of water, but if you keep on pouring, it spills over. If you sharpen a knife, it gets sharper and sharper, but keep on sharpening, it blunts and breaks. You bend a bow to shoot the arrow, the more you bend it, of course it'll go further, but keep on bending, it'll break. So the art of knowing when to stop. I love the story of Confucius, who has some disciples who were far more superior in some attributes, but they chose to study with Confucius. So for example, and he was asked, how is it that this particular disciple studies with you and he's much more courageous than you are? He said, yes, this disciple is far more courageous than I am, but he doesn't know when to be cautious. Another one is very dignified, very regal. He says, yes, he's very dignified, very regal, but he doesn't know when to be unassuming. And the third one, and that's probably most relevant for us today, oh yes, he or she is far more eloquent than I am, but doesn't know when to give a simple yes or no for an answer. That sounds like me. In the Zen tradition, they say this is akin to about overdoing. This is akin to an artist who draws legs onto a snake or a beard on a eunuch. So knowing when to stop. Just be with that for a few moments. Okay, the next one I see is being spontaneous. I think for me this means be in the present moment. Go with the flow. If you have a prepared speech, be flexible to make those changes rather than sticking with what you have. So I love that wonderful saying, that insight, blessed are the flexible, for they will never be bent out of shape. So just be with that for a few moments. I'm looking at my time and I'm looking at some points. I'll just add a few more points. I think for me, in a council, in a group, in a circle, it is very powerful, very essential for there to be friendship. Then, when there is friendship, the ego is less bruised when there are differences, when there's some heat. This reminds me actually of an interfaith conference I went to, some friends actually, and there were Jews, there were Christians, there were Muslims, and some of them, they were actually quite big leaders. They got into this heated argument, arguing about the stories of Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, Ishmael, Isaac, and it was kind of embarrassing. It got overheated, shall I say, got over vigorous. And one of the friends was a Native American professor from New York University, unfortunately has passed away, who was rolling on the floor with laughter. And finally, one of those panelists said, "What is so funny?" He said, we Native Americans, we have stories also. The only difference is you guys believe the stories." And this, of course, caused so much laughter, it broke the tension. And when you have friendship, it becomes easier to let go of what the ego is holding on to. Only because the ego doesn't want to let go. You will lose face. You'll be proven wrong. So this reminds me actually of how they catch monkeys. So I'm thinking of the experience in our part of the world. They take a dried coconut and make an opening, and they put some solid food inside, and they tie the coconut to a tree. And the monkey, lured by that fragrance, the scent of the food, comes in, it narrows its fist, its fingers, and goes inside and grabs that solid food like this, but then is unable to take its hand out because the hole is too small. And it shrieks and jumps, and of course all it has to do is just let go of that solid food and the hand will come out, but it just can't think of letting go of that food it has clung onto. And the hunters are just laughing their heads off, how this monkey is getting caught, because all you have to do is just let go. But of course, the great sages say, in our life, how many trials and tribulations we go through because we just cannot let go. But in a group of friends, it becomes easier to be able to let go. Okay, so I was emphasizing friendship. I would like to make one or two more points. Moral courage. It takes a lot to speak the truth, especially if you're bucking the trend, meaning going against the norms of the culture, tradition, what the elders say, what the religion says of our time. Change is very difficult. I repeat, it takes a crisis to create a change. So in my own world of interfaith, it has taken violence, killings, wars, crisis, for us to evolve in the world of interfaith, to move from what was considered so grand, just tolerating the religions of other. And then after a period of lot of pain and sadness and wounds, physically, emotionally, mentally, we move to respecting and honoring the differences in the religion. And then 9/11, crisis of 9/11, and now the consciousness is not only to respect and honor the differences in different people's religions, but to celebrate the differences. So, my friends, all this requires higher consciousness to become a more complete, developed human being. This even means questioning or expanding the golden rule to morph it into the platinum rule, that I want for the other what I want from myself, but what if my level of consciousness is very low? So I must expand my level of consciousness. I must really, in a heartfelt way, know what is in the highest interest of the other. So rather than go on, let me just one more time repeat this very well-known Sufi story, which you can meditate on for a lifetime, which is why I repeat it again and again. So here's the story. There's a sincere monkey whose mission is to go to neighborhood ponds, lakes, and pluck the fish out of water to save it from a watery grave. There's a sincere monkey who travels to bodies of water to pluck the fish out of the water to save it from a watery grave. Please be with that. And lastly, it's a very mysterious world. We have all kinds of council. There's a human council, assemblies. You know, the Quran says animals are communities like your own. They have their own assemblies. Can we respect that and connect with that? Nature, we know for sure, communicates and has assemblies of its own. Also, if I may go deeper, in this world of mystery, we have angels. A Muslim is asked to have faith in God, and number two, in angels. Also, there's a group of beings the Quran talks about called jinn, Jinn. These are beings of fire, who the Quran says are like you human beings. They're invisible, but they participate in the bazaar of life. They marry and they have their own assemblies. And they're advanced human beings who can connect with the world of mystery. And there's a whole different level of councils. So I'll just end with two things. One is, you know, for centuries among Sufis, particularly in Persia, there's a group that's called Anjumane Khamoshi, Society of Silence. They're a group of very advanced human beings, very pious, loving, who send light and love into the world to really foster understanding, harmony, peace. They don't talk very much. They communicate in silence. It's a society of silence. There's a very famous Sufi master, Abdul Qadir Jilani, 12th century, who had intuited that one person in this society of silence had passed away. And this group would meet from time to time in Baghdad for the conferences. And so he went in the direction of Baghdad because he felt he was someone who could be inducted in this society of silence. Unfortunately, as he was approaching the gates of Baghdad, they already had chosen somebody else in that society of silence, that secret, cosmic, beautiful council. And so to give him the news, the gates of Baghdad opened, the emissary from that council came. Of course, they don't talk. He brought with him a glass and a pitcher of water, and he poured the water into the glass to the brim, indicating the council was full. There was no place for him, sadly. And what did Abdul Qadir Jilani do? He reached into the air, he plucked a rose petal and put it on the water without disturbing the water, indicating two things. He had the power to do something so enchanting and magical, and his presence would not disturb the fullness of the council. And then the gates of Baghdad opened up. So the point here is it's a very mysterious world. And I want to end with a story which my grandfather would say again and again for us to realize that, it's a very mysterious world. There is traffic and trade in those invisible realms. We know very little. We have to come out of our narrow biases, our narrow worldviews. And it's a story I repeat all the time, where an ocean frog goes to visit the well frog, his cousin, a frog who has been brought up in the well. And the ocean frog is trying to explain to the well frog about the ocean. And the well frog says, "Are you saying that the ocean is half the size of the well?" It's more. 3/4, even more. You don't mean to tell me the ocean is as big as the entire length of this well? So eventually the ocean frog manages to get the well frog out of the well and take him to where the ocean is. And the moment the well frog sees the ocean, his brain explodes. He just can't take it, cannot envision, cannot enclose the immensity of what really exists. But the lesson here is it's a very big world, it's a very mysterious world, and if you have to expand, do it little by little by little. Okay, my friends, I've said enough. I should follow that rule about be succinct. I'll be brief. I'll be quiet for a few moments. And now a very short meditation, the one we do all the time. Just close your eyes. And just be with your nostril. And please follow your breath as you inhale and as you exhale. Just as much being present with your breath. And now, my friends, letting go of this, still eyes closed, focusing on your heart. And then, if it works for you, to touch your heart, one hand, both hands, and really feel, connect with, bond with your heart. Our heart has been yearning, aching to connect with us. And now, please, bond and connect with the beat of the heart. Listen, connect, bond with the heartbeat. And now, some words, vibrations of words. The Quran says to God belong the most beautiful names. In this infinite space, plant some words, knowing that it is infinite, based on a revelation that came to the Prophet Muhammad for Muslims, where God says, Beloved one, I cannot be contained in the space of the earth, I cannot be contained in the space of the heavens, but I can be contained in the space of the pure, loving heart. Spirit, God, divinity is outside of you and inside of you, inside your heart. So place words of beauty like, thank you, I am so grateful. It could be, please help me, I need help. Sufis like to say, I love you, with feeling, with sincerity, no matter how awkward it feels. I love you, or please help me to love you, or anything else that resonates for you. Thank you, I am so grateful. Please help me. I surrender to you. Please help me to love you. I love you. Anything else? And as you keep saying those words, a magical divine vibration is going from the tongue into the mouth, into the throat, deep into the chest, into the heart, even deeper into what is called the hidden, and then into the hidden of the hidden, astonishingly loving us, blessing us, healing us, empowering us, transforming us. And now letting go of this and coming into awareness, and ever so gently as I chant Bismillah, coming into awareness. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Ever so gently, opening your eyes.